How is Gurgaon, sir? Is it raining there?
Not really. I think Delhi has experienced better rains as compared to Gurgaon. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir.
Mm.
All right, so we are live. Can I start, sir?
Yeah, please.
With your permission. A very warm welcome to you, sir, on our speaker series. Hello, everyone. I'm Kalpana Chaudhary, founder of Social Tables, managing trustee and chairperson of Janseva Foundation, Being the Change, and Lagna.com. Lagna.com is a matrimony portal for differently able cancer and acid attack survivors. Co-chairman, co-chairperson of ASSOCHAM State Women Entrepreneur Development Council, GSDC, active member of Wikiflow, CIA, IWN, Maharashtra Women Economic Forum, and TEDx speaker. Before diving into the guest introduction, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to the Social Tables. Social Tables is committed to sustainable development program with societal well-being and environmental consciousness. Every week, we bring out to you some of the brightest minds from diverse sectors to discuss over a few significant ongoing issues. In this week's speaker series, we have a guest, Dr. Sanjeev Gemawat, Executive Director, Dalmia Bharat Group. Dr. Sanjeev Kemawat is an original thinker, a thoughtful leader, and a strategist with business orientation. His understanding of the society, economic, and his interpersonal skills make him a people's person. He strongly believes that learning is a constant process and that life is the best teacher. He also believes that healthy interaction is the best way to prevent problems and best solution in case of problems. He is a corporate lawyer, chartered accountant, cost accountant, and chartered secretary from India and UK. He is a postgraduate in law and holds a doctorate in insider trading beside specialization in international trade laws and WTO from ICAI. His areas of interest besides law and history, philosophy, and religion, he is equally passionate about education. He interacts regularly with students on different academic and professional forums and makes them realize their goals and believe in their own potential. Dr. Gemawat has almost 3 decades of experience spanning through various industries. He is presently working as executive director, legal and group economy secretary with Group, Dalmia Bharat Group, a conglomerate that carries a legacy of over 75 years and having experience in cement, sugar, refactories, and power business. He is the In the past, he has been associated with leading groups like DLF, JCB, Albeti, GBC, Modi Crop, etc., an acclaimed speaker, author on varied contemporary issues. He has shared his views at various national and international forums. He is known for experiencing his views candidly and indigenously. He has been a part of various committees, delegation constituted by industry, professional bodies, and interacted with multilateral trade bodies, including WIPO, WIPO, D, WTO, European Commission, and Law Society of England and Wales, etc. Wow. Presently, Dr. Gemawat is a co-chairman of the Law and Justice Committee of PHDCCI. He has been acknowledged and honored as one of the India's finest in-house counsel, the most influential corporate counsel and company secretary, and also inducted to Global Hall of Fame for contribution and work in the legal ecosystem in India and the world. His views on various contemporary issues can be found in the print and digital media, including global publication. A very warm welcome to you, sir, on our today's speaker series. It's a
Kalpana, so nice of you. So nice of you for inviting me and inviting me to share my views. But then, above all, I would like to say that the kind of work which you are doing, and I think I'm absolutely amazing kind of work and multifaceted work which you are doing. And I should say that these kind of works cannot happen without that passion, and the passion is absolutely there, in terms of doing so many activities. So nice of you, so nice of you for inviting me and introducing me in such a detailed manner. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. It's so motivating and very empowering. So it's utmost pleasure to have you here with us today. So in today's discussion, we are going to discuss about respect private sector as its contribution and congruity are the key to economic revival and growth of the nation. Sir, what in your views is the reason that private sector, despite of its contribution to the economy, has not been given due respect which it deserves?
Well, Kalpana, very interesting question, but then I would say that very emotional question as well for me, and particularly for the people who are representing the private sector. So first, before I share my views in the, for this question or, other questions as well, just a disclaimer, because I'm a legal professional, so I should give that disclaimer that these views are my personal views, and these are not associated or linked with the organization whom I represent or with whom I'm associated with. So these are purely personal views on this. Now, regarding private sector, interesting thing is that this economy, the economy of any nation, and for that matter, economy of India, that is dependent on the private sector. Now, if you take the data, if we are today a $2.8 trillion economy, I think let's accept this fact that nearly 75% of this economy is arising out of private sector, which constitute the industry nearly 25% and the services nearly 50%. If you talk about the workforce, so we have nearly around 55 to 60% workforce in these two sectors, and these sectors are led by the private sector. But when I say that, and the question is that whether the due respect has been given to the private sector, what it deserves. So what it deserves is that data itself indicates that the economy of the nation or economy of India is dependent upon this private sector, because that is the largest contributor as far as the country's GDP is concerned. We have set target for ourselves a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Now, who would achieve this? Who would achieve this? Whether can public sector alone achieve this? Answer is definitely no. There should be some private initiatives on this, and that private initiative can only happen through the private sector. Now, in this backdrop, we need to understand that when we talk about private sector, what are we talking exactly? Why we say at times that it doesn't command that respect which it should have, it should have been given. Today, the fact is, for this $5 trillion economy, what we would be needing? We would be needing an ecosystem where the private sector gets respected. We need technology and innovation. We need a skilled workforce. We need funding. Who would bring all this? And obviously, the answer is that this ecosystem needs to be created. But then when I talk about the ecosystem, what ecosystem we are indeed, we are referring to? What are we talking about this ecosystem?
Precisely my point.
Now, the answer lies, Kalpana, the answer lies in one statement, very few words, which the Prime Minister on his 15th August speech last year made. And that clicked me. What did he say? He said, please respect wealth creators. Unless you create wealth, how would you be distributing that wealth? Now, this one sentence, one statement says a lot. Now, are we respected like that? Are we respected like that? Now, private sector today, and just an example. If suppose I have a project, say some commercial project, for example, I established some commercial project. Now, the commercial project would lead to what? That would lead to number of commercial establishments there in that commercial project. For those commercial projects and commercial establishments would earn revenue for the state, because that would be contributing to the state exchequer. That commercial establishment would be generating employment. Answer is yes, generating employment. That commercial project would be an infrastructure for the state, and the state would be boasting about that we have that level of infrastructure. For example, take example of Haryana. Haryana state boasts about it that we have developed in Gurgaon city. We have created that kind of infrastructure today that multinationals can come, multinationals can establish their shops, factories, etc. And this is what the boosting the state does. But then this is what the state takes advantage of everything, what has been created. But then ask me and ask that entrepreneur whether state has facilitated that establishment of the project. You would find that state was so negative at the time of establishment of the project. And why negative? Because state would say, there you need to take these approvals, these licenses, this, that, etc. And you will keep on following up with the state. Now, an infrastructure which is getting created, that infrastructure which is required for the state for the revenue generation, because that would be the base for the infrastructure, for the infrastructure creation. That would be generating employment. That would be earning revenue for the state. But the same state has not given that credence to the private sector or to the entrepreneur or to that businessman when he was establishing the project, when he was operating that project. And he is being treated as if he has done some crime because he is representing a private sector. So where the problem lies, and I'm just generalizing this, you will find this state of affairs all across India, in all systems and all areas, whether mufassil areas or metropolitan cities or otherwise. So what is impacting? What is impacting? How that entrepreneur is being treated by the state or by the government or by the bureaucracy. Now today a private sector enterprise or an entrepreneur or a businessman, he would be facing two hurdles, because he will have to face two extremes. One is the bureaucracy and the other is the justice delivery system. Now the bureaucracy and the justice delivery system, their orientation, and I think that I should not be blaming them per se, because our social orientation has been such for the last 7 decades. We are completely socialist in our thought process, and that socialist thought process teaches us that profit making itself is bad. So the moment that idea comes to your mind that profit making itself is bad, you would be looking at the businessman, entrepreneur with that suspicion. Please stop that suspicion. The message which I want to give, Kalpana, is please respect them. They are the creators of the wealth for the nation. They are creating wealth for this nation. Please respect them. Please facilitate them in terms of creating further infrastructure so that the society would improve. And ultimately, let us understand this. Either bureaucracy or justice delivery system or any other institution, ultimately we are representing one society where you yourself would be benefited in unless if the economic growth happens. So you should be part of that economic growth. You should be facilitating that. You should be promoting that. While the things are not happening in that fashion. And so that is the reason why I respect the statement which the Prime Minister has given. Please respect wealth creators. Please respect wealth creators. And I think when you ask me this question, whether they get that due respect which they deserve, my answer would be not really, not really. The kind of obstructions which gets created in the process, they are manifold and multifaceted. And believe me, under one pretext or the other, there would be one or the other obstructions created by either the state or by people who would be having one or the other vested interest. I think somewhere we need to stop this. And so this is what my brief comment as far as this part is concerned. Yeah.
I am always struck, and I hope the government does something more for the private sector. I'm sure they will contribute a lot more than already they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kalpana, let us understand what we need exactly. We need innovation to happen if we want to grow. Now, today is the economy. Today, with this economy, we cannot be silent spectators in terms of only the basic infrastructure development. It's It's today industry is a fourth generation industry, what we are talking about. Now, whatever development which would happen, if that development would be with regard to and with that those those elements in terms of whether that be an artificial intelligence or machine learning kind of products, and then this is what the future of the industry would be. So what we are looking for, we would be looking for the highest amount of innovation, which should take place in almost all industries across the across the platform. And that innovation cannot happen without private sector's involvement. Now, public sector alone cannot do this. Today, if you take example of the public sector undertakings, what is happening? Now, 3 decades back, when I used to study the public enterprises, at that point of time, there were a few central public sector undertakings. Today, also there are few central public. I think there were at that point of time nearly 5 key central public sector undertakings. Today, that number might be 5 to 10. But then whether they have contributed, perhaps in the initial period, yes, that was required. When we followed that Nehruvian model, perhaps that was required in terms of creating that infrastructure, because private initiative was not there initially. But then today things have changed. Today things have changed, and we need to be adapting ourselves to those new realities. And that is the reason why I say that socialist mindset, which is already registered, ingrained in our approach and thoughts, I think somewhere that needs to be stopped.
So, sir, having said that, what are the corrective measures required which may help in strengthening and giving its due to the private sector?
Well, again, let's go into the problem first. And I think that the problem would address the solutions or the corrective measures what we are talking about. Mm-hmm. If you ask me in a single word, in one word, what can be the corrective measure, I would say only one word, and which is mindset change. This mindset change, this single word, the mindset change, would significantly change the way in which we are functioning, the way in which the private sector is getting today the due recognition, or the way in which in future it would be getting that due recognition. Now, today, this social mindset, as I said, the social mindset outweighs all benefits in terms of, the fact is, if you execute any project, if you interact with the government or the state, their social mindset would be dictating what terms you would be having as far as the projects are concerned. Now, this socialist mindset should change, and that the answer lies in if you notice that World Bank publishes that report on ease of doing business.
Yes.
Now if you notice that ease of doing business, today we have progressed significantly well. Somewhere 77 points down. Today we are at 63rd position as far as the 2019 data is concerned, from that earlier 142 or so. But still we are failing in which all areas? Ease of starting business, we are at 136. Enforcing contracts, we are at 163. Registering of property, we are somewhere around over 150 or so. For payment of taxes, we are again more than 100 or 115 or whatever. Now look at this situation. Ease of starting business, we are at 136. It essentially means that entrepreneurs are not getting that due attention in terms of establishing their business. How would you be progressing your private sector? Tell me. How would you be establishing businesses? Tell me. If your ranking is 136, take example of enforcement of contract. Enforcement of contract, you're 163. Now, which all countries are worse than you? Kalpana, you would be amazed. Which all countries are worse than you? Afghanistan, Zimbabwe. Now, this is happening in a country, in a nation, which has a strong foundation of rule of law, which has a strong foundation of democracy. Can we afford to have that? Now, if this situation, these two things gets corrected, I think we would achieve what we want to achieve. But then how you would be achieving this, how you would be changing this situation, that is the million dollar question. Just to give you an example, economic survey, the latest economic survey that mentions, when it is talking about approvals and licenses, it mentions that for starting a restaurant in Delhi, you need to seek an approval from the police. And that approval is for the eating house license. Now, to get that eating house license, you need to comply with 45 documents. But to get a license for a gun, you need to comply with 19 documents. Are you looking at this, the mechanism in which the Indian industry or the businessmen or the entrepreneurs are facing? There are nearly 7,000 compliance requirements for a manufacturing setup. Mm-hmm. And this data is not, mine alone. This data is the Government of India's data, published in the Economic Survey. 7,000 compliance requirements you need to have for manufacturing setup. Now think about it. Whether an entrepreneur who is setting up a manufacturing unit, his interest is what? His interest is to make the best of the product, to earn profit on that. That is what his objective is. And that should be his objective, to make the best of the product, comply with the law, and make profits. Now, for that, these series of requirements, do you really need that? When this government came, and I was very happy, in fact, they have done some of the revolutionary kind of, initiatives. For example, I still remember earlier when this government came, there used to be a Boilers Act, for example. Now, for that boiler, the factory inspector used to come and see the boiler and all that. And, I'm not talking about here the corruption part of it, the way in which the things used to move. Now, think about it. When Mr. Modi said, and I think, in the initial phase of his, prime ministership only. Now, which businessman would be foolish to have to not comply with the law in terms of the maintenance of boiler and all that? Would he be spoiling his own factory? So are the situation in terms of number of either environmental laws or otherwise. Who would not be wanting to comply with the law? Businessman wants to manufacture product, trade in that product, earn profit on that.
Challenges are you facing? I mean, you have been saying so much. Why isn't this happening? Why aren't entrepreneurs? Because if I remember, MSME also launched this champion.com where, it's in just a span of a day, you log in and they approve it.
Well, I would say, look, things are changing. It's not that things are not changing. Well, one thing is, let me point out here. It's not that things are not changing. These are, I am seeing the economic surveys of the government for last nearly 3 decades or so. Last few years, the kind of contribution which these economic surveys have done, and very openly, very candidly, they have pointed out. Now, this year's economic survey, Kalpana, that mentions that we are continuing with those laws and regulations which have already lost their relevance in the current scenario. Just take an example. In the Essential Commodities Act, you are not required to hoard commodities. So you would be raided by the officials. Economic survey indicates that there were 17,000 raids. 17,000 raids. And how many convictions? Less than 3%. So what have you done? You have discouraged those, and this 17,000 raids, they happen in 1 year. So 1 year. So it essentially means, to that extent, all those businessmen, entrepreneurs, they have suffered. For those number of raids, 17,000 or 19,000, I'm just missing that figure, but then just take 17,000 for a moment. At least 5 people must be there in terms of one raid. So that level of administrative resources you have wasted completely. In the end, what have you achieved? a minuscule kind of convictions. But the larger issue is not this. Larger issue is that do you really need this law? If you are continuing with that obsolete law of Essential Commodities Act, perhaps that might be relevant in 50s and 60s when India was not having the complete, storage of food and all that, or grains or whatever. That point of time, we were not self-sufficient. At that point of time, perhaps that law was needed. But then today, when you have this law now, and that, that the economic survey also mentioned that example, and a very interesting one, Kalpana.
This is Government of India survey you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Economic survey mentions that onion prices are fluctuating in India. But then all those countries where there is a permission for hoarding or permission for storage, then there the prices are stable. So with that Essential Commodities Act, where you are not allowing people to hoard or store the product, there the prices are fluctuating and people are taking perhaps benefit of it. But then whether we need this law, when today, if suppose you have a storage facilities, you have a hoarding facilities, if you allow businessmen to do all this, perhaps you will end up having a situation in which there would be a free flow in terms of freedom of trade, basically, free flow of trade. And everybody would be benefited, including the customers, because there would be price stability, there would be competition. And that is exactly the reason, if you notice, last few days, government is coming out with those legislations. So when you say that what corrective steps are required, the corrective steps are in twofold. One is the mindset issue and the other is the systemic issues. The systemic issues are basically in terms of removing all these obsolete laws, bring more and more transparency in terms of governance, and somewhere you need to fix accountability as far as the state is concerned or the executive is concerned. Unless you fix this, you will keep on having the same number of enforcement of contract, more than 150 or 163, or ease of starting business more than 135 or 136. I think somewhere we need to address that situation.
So I would say with dues increasing, there should definitely be some ways in which these private sectors should get their dues, since there is a high risk of companies shutting down.
Yes. You're right. And the things are happening. I would not say that things are not happening. Even that recognition of these very facts in terms of government publications, acknowledgement of these realities in government publications, this is what we need. Today, we are discussing these issues because public opinion is getting framed that no, things are not happening rightly. And perhaps in the times to come, we will have to mend our ways, or we will have to change our attitude towards business, towards the private sector. So I think this is what we need. Just let me give you an example. Well, are we really bothered when you say that corrective measures? I think that the realization, just a thought, that the private sector is a part of nation building. That just one thought would completely change the mindset. I just give you an example. A few years back, or a decade back, or more than a decade back or so, I was working with one organization and I wanted to expand my facilities. It was a multinational company. So I wanted to expand our factory expansion and all that. I went to the government with the top bureaucracy of the state.
Which year, sir?
Which year you are talking about? Yeah. It's around, it's 2005.
Okay.
2005. So I went to the government and I made all those presentations that this is how we want to expand our facilities. This is what the contribution to the state exchequer would be. This is what the employment we would be generating. And we have given a complete plan and a proper presentation on this in terms of giving what we want. The highest level of bureaucracy, what they have advised, they were not at all bothered about that presentation. They were not bothered about that presentation. They said that, no, okay, you might have written that data, that's fine. Everybody would be writing that employment generation and state exchequer and all that. It's fine. You do one thing, you meet the chief minister or you meet the industry minister. Now, this approach needs to be changed. We are really contributing to the nation building. If some entrepreneur is establishing a factory, he is creating infrastructure for the country, he is generating employment for the nation. He is generating revenues for the state, and so that all these things are happening. I think that kind of approach, that kind of thought, that is what we need as far as the private sector growth is concerned. And as I said, that just one thought, that this is a part of nation building. Please respect them, that they are also contributing in their own way. I think that itself would be sufficient.
Well, so moving forward from the history of PPP, that is public-private partnership in India, do you feel the model can still be implemented? If yes, how?
Well, Kalpana, it's again, this PPP model miserably failed in India.
Yeah.
Miserably failed in India. But then do we have any option? Answer is no, we don't have any option. We don't have any option.
Okay.
Unless the public sector and private sector join hands, things cannot move, because the kind of infrastructure which we need to build in the times to come, I think this model will have to be revamped. This model will have to be rethinked about. But the issue here is why this model failed.
Mhm.
First thing is that why we needed this model, obviously for the simple reason that you cannot establish infrastructure projects unless you have a participation from the private sector in terms of money, in terms of skills, in terms of technology, in terms of innovation. So that is because government alone or public sector alone cannot fulfill all those requirements of the infrastructure sector. So that was the main reason in terms of developing this project or this partnership. But then what happened? This concept of partnership between public and private, that partnership was missing. In PPP, the third P of partnership was missing. Both the establishment joined hands together, but then that partnership, the thought of partnership was missing. And ultimately what happened? Risk is all to the private sector, but then reward is to the public sector. Now things cannot happen like this. If you have joined hands, if these are partnerships, then that partnership needs to be respected. Risk and rewards are together. But then what happened? That equal partnership between a public sector and private sector culminated into a master-servant relationship. From an equal relationship to a master-servant relationship. Now that master-servant relationship dictates that you do wrong, I do right, and you keep on harassing the private sector because you have not achieved what you are required to achieve. But if you forget the fact that to achieve all those, there were approvals required from the government, there were licenses required from the government, there were external reasons why the projects get delayed at time. We have all seen last 10, 15 years, the way in which the Indian economy, or for that matter, the global economy has got impacted by the Lehman Brothers issue in 2008, 2009, and subsequent, downturn under one pretext or the other. So we have all seen that. There are always at times genuine mistakes happens, genuine reasons are there in terms of failing of the businesses, etc. These things happen. But then somewhere that relationship needs to be respected, that the risk and rewards are together. This cannot be one way factor. And that is the reason why PPP model failed miserably. Not today, perhaps there are nearly 1,000 PPP projects today going on. Now, country of this size.
Haven't you addressed this issue at the top government?
I would say that these issues are raised by almost all industry bodies. All industries bodies have time to time raised those issues, because industry is a sufferer in the whole process, because the approach has always been finding fault as far as the private party is concerned, because you have not completed. While at the same time, if you notice, even those public sectors or government projects, they also fail, they also get delayed. That happens, all that, because PPP model has been largely successful in India only as far as the highway projects are concerned, and of course it was introduced in the first instance in the highway projects only, and so it was successful to a certain extent. But then whether that success itself is sufficient, answer is no. The kind of infrastructure which we need to develop a culture of PPP model in almost all areas of the country, and this should not be limited and restricted to only big infrastructure projects. Why not small infrastructure projects in the towns, in villages, in districts, etc.? Why not to develop those infrastructure projects also with this PPP model? And this would certainly help. This would certainly help in terms of employment generation. This would certainly help in terms of increasing the prosperity of the masses. So I think that needs to be relooked into. So my suggestion would be that yes, failed, undoubtedly failed so far, but then whether this has a future, answer is definitely it has a future. And in fact, I would strongly believe that infrastructure development cannot happen without the involvement of private sector. Take the example of the recent government guidelines on that infrastructure initiatives. That infrastructure initiatives of the government by say 2022 or 2024, there is somewhere around $1.4 trillion of investment in the infrastructure sector. Now, from where this amount would be coming? Now, this amount, the way in which the government is structured is that 39% from the central government, 39% from the state government, and the remaining from the private sector. Now, the private sector itself is 22,000 lakh crores. Now, this amount, how you would be bringing that amount? You will have to develop that ecosystem so that private initiatives take place. FDI comes as far as these projects are concerned, and then you can, successfully establish this project. So my thought here is that yes, a few initiatives have been good so far. For example, recent that mechanism of the hybrid annuity model. Hybrid annuity model would be a successful model in the times to come as far as big projects are concerned. But then somewhere we will have to come out with some innovative model, even for infrastructure projects which are small in nature. And I think it should be spread in almost all areas of the nation in terms of town, villages, and districts to big infrastructure projects as well. And so it has definitely a future. Let's see how we develop this. The larger part is, again, answer here also lies in the change of mindset. Of course, certain systemic issues we can always address, and we should address, in fact, like which is transparency should be there. There should be the contract should be foolproof in terms of addressing all the issues of both the parties. Now these things should be structured, but then larger issue would be, again, a mindset issue and thought, a right thought in terms of executing that.
I think Modi ji is under his strong leadership, this all issues should be addressed very soon and quickly.
I think so. I think so. And let me tell you, Kalpana, the way in which the government is taking initiatives. The government, today they are very broad-minded in terms of, they are very receptive in terms of seeking that thoughts from the industry. The difficulty lies now not in policy formulation. Policies are getting formulated. Just think about it. The obsolete laws we are doing away with. For example, I was also reading the drug control order. Now, under drug control order, you fix prices, or the agriculture that marketing produce act, under which you are fixing the prices and all that. Are these required? Let the farmers be free. Let them earn money. That there should be a free flow. Please create that ecosystem so that they can enjoy all this. Promote that competitiveness, and I think that is what is required. And the government is taking all those initiatives. The problem lies is that mindset as far as the bureaucracy is concerned, that bureaucracy's mindset in all levels. I would say that at the higher level, perhaps things are changing. I think things are changing. There are a broader outlook, their horizons are wide. But then when you are actually interacting with the different levels, and whether that be state or district or other areas, you will find the same old mindset that businessman is or they doubt businessman, or that why are you making profit, or that if you are making profit, please share with us, whether through the legal means in terms of taxes. I'm not talking about the corruption part of it, because corruption we can always talk and all that, and whether to what extent corruption is there in the society, I have a different views on that. But then the point here is that if you are earning money, please share it with the government in terms of either one levy or the other. You will be amazed. At times in certain states, those kind of legislations are there which has no impact, but then the state would be raising a demand on you that you have traded in our locality, and so you better pay this. Now, in a GST kind of regime, whether you need those kind of, and it's again an interpretation and inferences as far as those regulations or those laws are concerned, they might not be relevant. For example, if you have set up a factory, you are having a manufacturing establishment, obviously, not only in India, in any part of the world, you cannot establish a manufacturing facility unless you have all those approvals and licenses in place, unless you have the government approvals in place. You cannot do that.
But isn't
You have
the
established that.
on this, because that's what I mean. I heard when Modi during not only Narendra Modi's speeches, but a lot of other politicians who have also come on my social tables channel to discuss about various issues. They are quite quick in addressing all these issues. I mean, this is very strange what I'm hearing.
No, not strange, Kalpana. No, I might be sounding slightly negative here, but then I'm optimist on that.
To
No,
understand, yeah.
no. So let me give you example. As I said, things are happening, things are changing. There are significant changes, the way in which we are seeing the legislative framework is taking shape. But then still, it's not only the role of the central government. Under the Constitution of India, there's a state list. There are certain areas which are under the state's jurisdiction. Now, under the state jurisdiction, if a factory gets established, and if you are dealing with those products, you are paying all those taxes. But then there would be some old legislation, 70 years old, 80 years old, and which was perhaps might be enacted for the purposes of development of that tribal area. That if you are operating a shop or a salon or a barber shop or something, you will have to pay this much of amount to the state, etc. Now, the same legislation cannot be imposed as far as those big establishments are concerned. But then these things happen. The states keep on charging, and they all ultimately become litigations which are pending in the courts. So now what can happen? Now what can happen is the initiatives which we have taken at the central government level, similar initiatives are required at the state level, and also there should be. So that what would happen is that the ecosystem, we would be creating a perfect ecosystem whereby the confusion we can remove. And the second part is that we would be declogging as far as the Indian courts are concerned, because most of those issues ultimately go to the courts. So this is how I would be looking at it. Yeah, you were asking something, I believe.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say you that you have been very vocal about all these so many issues, and if you have been so vocal and openly talking about it, then there must be some problem, and which we need to address very quickly.
Yes. No, I think this is what Kalpana, these platforms, what you are organizing, these are required because these are the platforms where we give a public opinion a certain shape, and these public opinions ultimately lead to change in law. And as one famous jurist said, that in countries like India, developing countries, they are first the laws get enacted, and thereafter the public opinion gets framed. But then when the countries change their whole perspective, or when the progress happens, then ultimately what happens? Public opinion gets first framed, and thereafter the laws get enacted. So this is what we are doing in terms of a service to the nation, that yes, we need to create that ecosystem so that we can have a further economic growth in the times to come, and a better living and prosperity for the nation as a whole.
Absolutely, very well said, because when nation grows, we all grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you believe that the environment in our country is congenial for the private sector to progress?
Well, as I said, my many comments so far, they were revolving around that part only, and I was very candid, as you also rightly pointed out, in terms of creating that kind of ecosystem which we have not created. We try to do that, but then still we are far behind creating that ecosystem. Now we need to see that for that congenial environment, what exactly we need. We need right resources. We need opportunities for the private sector, and these opportunities and resources put together would be creating that kind of environment. But then this environment would also be getting impacted through two external factors, external environments. And those external factors are, one is our justice delivery system, and the other is our bureaucracy. Now, bureaucracy and justice delivery system, they need to be up to the mark. They need to be economically responsible justice system or economically responsible executive. Now, unless you have the economically responsible system, you will fail to achieve what you desire to achieve. Now, just to give you example, and I think I echo the similar sentiments which Mr. Salve, I heard him he expressed that there is a major problem after the 2G scam or the coal scam. The whole economy got collapsed because of this, and we are suffering today because of those very judgments. Now, I think what he is saying that makes sense to me, because these judgments lead to severe socio-economic consequences, which our justice delivery system or our executive, they need to think and rethink while delivering that. There can always be better mechanism to address the situation. While saying so, I don't mean that you should not be taking action against people who have committed offense. You should. But then you need to also see the larger consequences, and which are economic consequences, and which would be impacting the nation as a whole. And I think that somewhere that needs to be kept in mind while delivering justice.
Yes, but the gradient of private sector industry is definitely rising up, and sooner or later the other industries will see development in this industry, and they will make a sufficient environment. So, having said that, what kind of steps can we take to encourage private sectors?
Well, I would say, look, if you ask me in today's environment, post-COVID kind of situation, I would say that at least for 2 years, please do not interfere in the private sector's affairs. Let them be free. Let them become part of the economic growth. Let them be free, and their only focus should be to revive their businesses, so that we can continue to have we can have those the difficulties which we are facing. Kalpana, believe me, what is happening today? 40% economy is not functioning today. On a daily basis, we are suffering 35,000 crores. Now, in a state of this, because economy is not functioning, post-COVID situation, what happened? Things are not happening. So out of a $2.8 trillion economy, if the things are not happening, and it's an estimated figure that on a daily basis, nearly this is around 35,000 crores of economy is getting suffered. Now, somewhere this might be impacting what? To whom? Those workers, those industries, those entrepreneurs. Kalpana, believe me, today there are 7.5 crores MSME sector enterprises, micro, small, medium enterprises. Now, out of that, nearly 60% have effectively collapsed. Can we see this number? Now, in a situation like this,
which research does this say that?
Pardon, please?
Which research does claim this 60% of downfall?
Well, there are newspaper reports on that. Now, just to give you data, like economic survey mentions that the total workforce, somewhere around, I might be missing I might not be saying the exact numbers on that. Nearly 50 crores people are workforce today in India. Out of that 50 crores workforce, what we have is nearly 25 crores. They are in the self-employed category. And remaining 25 crores, around 12 or 13 crores, they are in the casual labor and migrant labor kind of category. And then the remaining 12, 13 crores are in the permanent employment. Now, out of this 25 crores of people who are self-employed, 1 crore people are those people who are giving employment. So they are the employers. So they are also taking care of those 25 crores who are in the casual labor or the permanent employee labor, etc. Now, our focus should be, when we say that encourage private sector, I think our focus should be encourage those 1 crore entities who are today employers. Give them whatever they want to have, so that they become the growth engine as far as the economy is concerned. So this is what I would say, that as far as the immediate revival is concerned, in my view, we should have a mechanism whereby no interference, at least for 2 years or so, for these entrepreneurs and businessmen. so that let them be free in terms of taking action. They should not be bothered about compliances, this, that, etc. And believe me, the kind of environment which we are in, of course, we are a democratic system whereby one or the other person would be filing frivolous complaints, and those frivolous complaints would be getting entertained by the government system. And if that gets entertained, there would be one or the other, investigations or raids, etc. Somewhere this needs to be stopped. That these vexatious litigation, these sponsored litigation, they should be stopped. Let the businessmen focus only on the business part of it, rather than those things. Now, unfortunate part is that we don't have a mechanism of seeking indemnification who are filing all those frivolous complaints. Now, what happens ultimately? Those businessmen are interacting and dealing with those very issues of compliances, etc., with the government system. So their focus and attention gets completely distracted. Rather than focusing on the business, they're focusing on something else. I think that needs to be changed, at least for 2 years. Give a moratorium. Just forget about it. Let businessmen, entrepreneurs, they should focus only and only on business, and please help in terms of nation building and economic revival. I think we would see the results.
But I'm just still thinking, who is stopping the business entrepreneurs to not work or take the lead? Because at the end of the day, it's all of us are working towards our nation itself. But this is what you're. Yeah.
No, so that's a reason why I said what is stopping them? What is stopping them? You please, as an entrepreneur, if you go to any Mufassil areas, even a town or village or district or even a big industry, you see problems when you are interacting for the approvals, licenses, your setups, etc. One or the other function. As I mentioned, that there would be one or the other complaints here and there, and the businessman would be only dealing with those issues only. So I think somewhere that interference of the system should be stopped, and that can only be stopped perhaps when you bring a transparency, a mechanism where the discretion level is to the minimum, a mechanism where there should be an accountability of the government system, and I think or accountability of the executive. I think that would answer all those problems.
Well, I think this needs to be shared widely and spoken about it, and I will definitely share it to Narendra Modi ji also in an email.
But also tell him that you are doing and he is indeed doing a great work for the nation. The kind of initiatives which he has taken, nobody can even dare to take that, in the past. I think amazing kind of work which he has done.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, because
Absolutely.
India is global.
Absolutely.
It needs to be shared, and I will definitely write a mail to him, because I would also want to share why I'm saying I would want to write a mail to him. I remember, I think 5 years back. So I just shooted a mail and couple of calls for an appointment, and I was given that. And Narendra Modi itself gave it to me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
he addresses every issues, and he will ensure that this will address. That's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the reason why I said that you are doing a great service to the nation building.
Thank you so much, sir. It's such an honor and privilege to know. Well, what kind of checks and balances would you recommend to maintain governance in the private sector?
Well, Kalpana, let me give a perspective. Today, the private sector which we are talking about, it is not the private sector which was 3 decades back or 4 decades back or 5 decades back. Today, we are living in a different environment altogether, a different private sector. Now, today's private sector is and wanting to focus only on the business. They are highly compliant as far as the government regulations are concerned. They don't want to do anything hanky-panky. They are completely focused in terms of the right kind of work with the right means. And this is what the private sector I look at. Now, and why I say so? Today you will notice that today industry is talking about not the shareholders value. Today industry talks about the stakeholders value. You will notice that most of the organizations, and all big organizations, of course, and even a smaller organization also, the kind of contribution which they make for the social, we have all seen, even in this COVID period, we have all seen all organizations, irrespective of their size and nature, They have contributed a lot as far as the economy is concerned, or as far as the support is concerned, or as far as the villages and towns where they are operating. They have contributed significantly. Nobody has pushed them to do that, but still they did that. So this is what the private sector which we are talking about. They are really, really concerned about the stakeholders, enhancement, value of the stakeholders, to increase. That is what the focus they are having. So it essentially means that they are focused in terms of compliance of law. They want to pay their taxes on timely basis. They can fight with you that you are not right in terms of imposing that tax, but then they are paying your taxes rightly. So this is what the private sector which we are talking about, and they are all concerned about sustainability. They are concerned about environment. So this is what the private sector which we are talking about. Now here, the checks and balances, I think we have sufficient checks and balances, and perhaps more than what we deserve. And believe me, the responsibility, the way in which the private sector has behaved responsibly, COVID is a true example in terms of demonstrating their responsibility. For example, and this is, I think, FICCI data also. FICCI data suggested even the industry which I am representing. Now, the cement industry is one of the 8 core industries as far as infrastructure sector is concerned. Now, this cement industry, which used to be called earlier a pollutant industry, today it is no more called pollutant industry. It is responsible. This is what the governance we are talking about. It is called a green industry because they are all environmentally concerned about that. So this is what called green and efficient industry. This is what the industry is. They are a post-COVID situation. Still, there were workforce which was, I think, around 60% workforce was gainfully employed. There were around 55 to 60% capacity utilization was there. So this is what the responsible private sector which we are talking about, and which fortunately we have that kind of environment today where the private sector is responsible, want to comply with the law. They want to follow the best of the governance practices. We need to capitalize on this. We need to further capitalize on this for the further nation building and for the economic growth of the nation. I think together, the only thing what my communication would be, or what my message would be, that please, now onwards, please start respecting wealth creators, start respecting these entrepreneurs and businessmen, either small or big. They are contributing in a significant way as for the nation building. So this is what the way in which I would be looking at it. Only urge would be that let's stop this suspicion about the industry. Private sector is meant for profit making. Let them make profit so that they can further put those resources for the economic growth of the nation.
Astonishing. A perfect balance always brings out the best of the best. So do you think Atmanirbhar package would boost the Indian economy and India towards self-reliant?
Undoubtedly. Absolutely, undoubtedly. Because, this is what I was talking about when when you were talking about Mr. Modi. So our Prime Minister is absolutely dynamic. Why I say so? The people who are confusing this Atmanirbharta or self-reliance with Swadeshi, they're wrong. It's not Swadeshi he's talking about. He's talking about self-reliant. And that self-reliant means number of other things. It's not Swadeshi alone. So what he's talking about, and then what the 5 pillars of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, what he mentioned is, he focused on what? He focused on economy. He focused on infrastructure. He focused on systems. He focused on vibrant demography. And he focused on demand. Now look at this. Systems, vibrant demography, and demand. These 3 pillars, they need to be addressed. So that first 2 pillars, which is economy and infrastructure, you will achieve that. Now, this interesting. Now, why we are talking about this? When it was first introduced, I think 12th May, he announced that Atmanirbhar Bharat. At that point of time, that package was only called as a package to tackle the situation of COVID. But then, once you review that, then you will realize that it is much more than that. Nowhere in the history of India, a 10% of the GDP has been parked for the purposes of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and where you have these 5 pillars, and then you have those 5 phases of Atmanirbhar Bharat, and where the kind of focus which he has made, and I think his focus was very clear in terms of masses. He is dealing with those 50 crore people, 50 crore workforce. Just think about it. He says he has given those special packages like for MSME sector or for the businesses. Now he says up to 200 crores, no government tendering to a foreign party. So basically, up to 200 crores of projects, all would be with whom? With the Indian corporates. And there he has included MSME by increasing the limit of MSME also. So I think these are great initiatives. Apart from that, I'm not talking about those those packages of 3 lakhs crores of the financing mechanism and all that stuff. I think it would significantly change the whole perspective, because it's no more an economic package. It's much more than that. It's a systemic package also as well. Number one. Number two, it's an Atmanirbhar Bharat, because he has created the public opinion that we all Indians, let us focus about creating that economic growth, and let us build the nation, and whatever facilitation is required from the government, I am here to give you that support. I think this is what the message he has given. So I'm really highly optimistic about this Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative.
Absolutely. So, an Atmanirbhar package has given a slight boost to a lot of entrepreneurs who have been looking for opportunities.
Yes.
That was one interesting session, and let's move quickly to this rapid fire. A very insightful and informative discussion we had, and let's see where this goes. I'm very positive and very hopeful that some action might be taken, because you have been very passionately, you have spoken your heart on it. So I really hope things get better. Well, and moreover, it is not only Narendra Modi, it is about all other state government who need to intervene and check into it.
Absolutely.
Every time when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about environment, or when we talk about climate change, the point goes to Narendra Modi ji. So that's
absolutely.
He's a man who is really doing. This leadership, I don't think so. Indians.
Absolutely. The biggest contribution is that he has created that vision in the minds of every Indian. I think that itself is, that itself addresses multiple issues. Yes.
He's a visionary leader, and he have motivated every Indian citizen to vision big and have big dreams and go and achieve. And he's there with us for.
Absolutely.
All right. Moving forward. So rapid fire. So who inspires you the most?
I think nature.
Wonderful. And what's the greatest risk you have ever taken?
Well, Kalpana, I belong to a family of government officials.
Oh, really?
And I am the first person who joined the private sector. So I think that was the risk when I took that decision nearly 3 decades back. I think at that point of time, it was a big decision.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the most memorable moment of your life?
Multiple, but once I was there in House of Lords and getting some award. So at that point of time, we never imagined during our school days and all that we would be somewhere going to the House of Lords and getting some award there. I think that was a memorable day, and I remembered my grandfather, because he was a police officer and during British period, and I used to hear a lot from him with regard to Britishers and all that. So so that was a memorable moment for me, and I thought that I should have had he been alive, I would have shared that with him as well. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. And I'm sure his blessings are there with you, and he's feeling the vibes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Well, frankly, no regrets. I'm, frankly, no regrets. But then I do believe that, academically, I should have, gone for some, other great studies as well, as far as, even legal studies I'm talking about. studies there. I think that would have changed my perspective about all that. I think that is one regret, that I have not got that kind of education. That's it. Yeah.
But there's always a time to relearn something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And a place where you love being the most.
I think nowadays this place only, because I work from home, and
Okay.
this is the place. So, but then otherwise, yes, at work. I think yes, at work.
And do you have any kind of hobbies?
Well, I like reading history. I like visiting historical and archaeological places, and some of the places I have visited a number of times. So I like reading history, religion, and philosophy, and visiting historical and archaeological places. This is what I think. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
And the very last question, if you were to be the prime minister for a day, what is the first thing you would do?
I think, in my own discipline, I think I need to do something as far as the justice delivery system is concerned, because Indian industry is facing a lot of problem. I think there's some initiatives which we should have taken. I think I would be looking for this legislative and judicial reforms in a big manner, and there I would be wanting to use the artificial intelligence as well in terms of resolution of issues. So this is what I would be looking for. Yeah.
All right. And so that was a quick response. And do you have any message for my platform, social tables?
Well, Kalpana, I would say, as I said, you are doing a great work and great service to the nation. And you don't know that these small and big steps, they finally culminate into a change in mindset of people, and they create public opinion. The way in which you are doing this great work so passionately, I think you deserve all applause and all recognition and all acknowledgements. And my best wishes to you. Keep doing this such nice work. God bless you, all of us, and all your team. And I think this is the way to change society and change mindset. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
So much, sir.
Thank
Wow. That was an amazing response. So before we conclude, a few word of wisdom or advice would you like to give to our audience?
Well, I would say that never stop thinking, never stop imagining. Somewhere we will find all solutions, and it's all mindset. So keep on thinking, keep on rethinking. I think we will get all responses. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, Kalpana. Grateful. Thank you very much.
Let me also take an opportunity to give you a vote of thanks. It's a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks to Dr. Sanjeev Gemawat, who, despite his busy schedule, has found time to grace this special interaction. We are extremely grateful to you for sharing your words of encouragement and giving us valuable inputs. Your eminent presence has indeed made this interaction a memorable one, and we unite to thank you from the bottom of our heart for your kindness, interest, and support. We wish you all the very best in all your future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.